Well, 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 my little mystery seekers. You know what's funny about secrets? Everyone thinks they want to know them, until they actually do. But you're here, aren't you? Drawn like moths to a flame, desperate to peek behind the curtain of chaos that even the almighty FBI couldn't unravel. You see, there's something beautifully twisted about a mystery so profound that the very organization built to solve puzzles, to crack codes, to hunt down the most elusive criminals, simply threw up their hands and said, "We quit." Can you imagine that? The Federal Bureau of Investigation, with all their resources, their technology, their brilliant minds, defeated, not by a criminal mastermind with the elaborate plan, but by something far more terrifying, the unknown. But what makes a mystery so mysterious that it breaks the system designed to solve mysteries? Oh, that's where things get interesting, my curious little investigators. You think you understand how the world works, don't you? Order, logic, cause and effect. Someone commits a crime, leaves evidence, gets caught. Simple, predictable, boring. Then along comes something that doesn't fit the pattern, something that laughs in the face of your precious logic and dances on the grave of conventional wisdom. The FBI loves their profiles, their behavioral analysis, their neat little categories. Organized crime here, serial killers there, everything in its proper place. But what happens when something refuses to be categorized? When it won't follow the rules? Chaos, my friends. Beautiful, terrifying chaos. Now imagine you're sitting in that sterile FBI office, surrounded by case files and crime scene photos. The fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry insects. You've got your best agents on the case, your top analysts burning the midnight oil, your technology scanning every possible lead. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months, months into years. The evidence piles up, but it doesn't connect. The clues multiply, but they don't solve anything. They just create more questions. The beautiful irony is that the more they investigated, the less they understood. Every new piece of evidence was like adding another card to a house of cards built in a hurricane. The foundation wasn't solid because there was no foundation at all. Just mystery, stacked upon mystery, wrapped in an enigma and tied with a bow made of confusion. You know what's fascinating about human nature? We can't stand not knowing. It eats at us, gnaws at our sanity like a hungry rat in the walls of our minds. The FBI agents working this case, they probably went home at night, staring at their ceilings, unable to sleep because their brains kept churning, kept trying to force square pegs into round holes. Some of them probably requested transfers, others might have quit altogether, because when your entire career is built on solving puzzles, what happens to your identity when you encounter a puzzle that can't be solved? But here's where it gets really interesting, my fellow chaos enthusiasts. The mystery wasn't just unsolvable because it was complex. It was unsolvable because it operated on a different set of rules entirely. Like trying to play chess with someone who thinks they're playing checkers, except they're actually performing interpretive dance while reciting poetry in a language that doesn't exist. The FBI has solved cases that seemed impossible. They've caught serial killers who thought they were untouchable. They've unraveled conspiracies that spanned decades. They've cracked codes that were supposed to be unbreakable. But this made them question everything they thought they knew. About investigation, about evidence, about the very nature of cause and effect. Think about the psychology of it all. These are people trained to find patterns, to connect dots, to create order from disorder. Their entire worldview is built on the assumption that every mystery has a solution, every question has an answer. But what happens when that assumption is shattered? when the dots don't connect because they're not even playing the same game. The beautiful thing about true mystery is that it doesn't just hide the answer. It questions whether there was ever a question to begin with. It's like trying to solve a riddle where the riddle itself keeps changing, where the very act of investigating changes what you're investigating. Schrödinger's mystery, if you will. The more you observe it, the more it transforms into something else entirely. And the FBI, they're used to dealing with criminals who, despite their chaos, still operate within certain parameters. Even the most unpredictable killer has patterns, motivations, psychological triggers that can be analyzed and understood. But what they encountered here was something that seemed to exist outside the boundaries of human psychology altogether. Something that made them realize that their entire approach to understanding criminal behavior might be inadequate. The agents probably started questioning their training, their methods, their fundamental assumptions about how mysteries work. Because when your tools are designed to measure one thing, and you encounter something that exists in a completely different dimension, what do? You either expand your understanding of reality itself, or you admit defeat. And that's exactly what happened. The FBI, with all their pride, their reputation, their resources, they looked at this mystery and realized they were children playing with toys they didn't understand. So they did the only rational thing left to do in an irrational situation. They walked away. But walking away doesn't make the mystery disappear, does it? It just means someone else gets to dance with the chaos. Someone else gets to stare into the abyss and wonder if it's staring back. Someone else gets to ask the questions that have no answers and seek the truth that might not exist. The question that haunts everyone who hears about this case is simple, yet impossibly complex. If the FBI couldn't solve it, if their best minds couldn't even comprehend it, then what exactly were they dealing with? What kind of mystery is so mysterious that it breaks the very concept of mystery itself? That's where our story truly begins. My delightfully disturbed audience, because understanding this enigma requires us to abandon everything we think we know about how mysteries work and dive headfirst into a realm where logic goes to die and chaos reigns supreme. The FBI gave up because they were trying to solve it like a normal case. But what if it was never meant to be solved at all? You see, my beautiful broken minds, the FBI's surrender wasn't just an admission of defeat. It was a revelation, a moment when the most powerful investigative force on Earth looked into the mirror of their own limitations and saw something that terrified them more than any criminal they'd ever faced. Themselves. Helpless. Confused. Human. But let's talk about what it means to be truly mysterious, shall we? You think mystery is about hiding something, don't you? Oh, how delightfully naive. Real mystery isn't about concealment. It's about existing in a state that defies the very concept of understanding. It's like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands, except the smoke is made of questions and your hands are made of assumptions that crumble at the first touch. The agents who worked this case, they probably started having nightmares, not about monsters or killers, but about filing cabinets that rearranged themselves when nobody was looking. About evidence that made perfect sense until you tried to explain it to someone else. About testimonies that were completely truthful and completely contradictory at the same time. Because that's what happens when reality decides to play by different rules. Your sanity becomes the first casualty. Now imagine you're the lead investigator on this case. You've built your entire career on the foundation that every crime has a perpetrator, every effect has a cause, every mystery has a solution hiding somewhere in the evidence. But what happens when the evidence starts investigating you? when the mystery begins to solve the investigators instead of the other way around. The beautiful thing about human psychology is how desperately we cling to patterns, even when the patterns are actively trying to escape us. The FBI probably created charts, timelines, behavioral profiles, connection maps, miles of red string connecting photographs and documents, creating a web that looked impressive but caught nothing. Because you can't trap something that exists in the spaces between the threads, something that feeds on the very act of trying to understand it. Think about the irony for a moment. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, an organization that exists to investigate, encounters something so thoroughly mysterious that the act of investigation itself becomes meaningless. It's like discovering that your flashlight doesn't just fail to illuminate the darkness, it actually makes the darkness darker. Your tools don't just fail to work, they actively work against you. But here's where it gets truly fascinating. My wonderfully warped watchers. The mystery didn't just resist being solved. It began to infect the very people trying to solve it. Because when you stare into chaos, long enough, chaos starts to stare back. And then it starts to live inside your head, rearranging your thoughts, like furniture in a house you thought you knew. The agents probably started questioning everything, not just the case, but the nature of investigation itself. If evidence can lie, if facts can contradict themselves, if logic can turn inside out, then what is truth? What is real? What is the point of seeking answers when the questions themselves might be illusions? Some of them probably requested psychological evaluations, not because they were going crazy, but because sanity itself had become a relative concept. When your job is to make sense of senseless things, what happens when you encounter something that makes senselessness sensible? When the absurd becomes the only thing that makes sense. The case files probably grew thicker and thicker, but instead of getting closer to a solution, they were building a monument to confusion. Each new piece of evidence was like adding another layer to an onion made of contradictions. Peel back one layer of mystery, and you'd find 3 more layers underneath, each one stranger than the last. And the bureaucracy. Oh, the beautiful bureaucracy. Imagine trying to write reports about something that defies description. How do you file paperwork for the impossible? How do you categorize the uncategorizable? How do you explain to your superiors that you've encountered something that makes your entire system of classification obsolete? The FBI has procedures for everything. Serial killers get this form, terrorists get that form, financial crimes get filed over there. But what form do you use for something that exists outside the boundaries of criminal behavior altogether? What database do you enter it into when it doesn't fit any of your categories? They probably created new categories, new forms, new procedures, desperately trying to force the mystery into their system, not realizing that the mystery was slowly rewriting their system from the inside out. Like a virus that doesn't just infect your computer, it teaches your computer to question what it means to be a computer. The psychological pressure on the investigators must have been extraordinary. These are people trained to bring order to chaos, to find truth in lies, to solve puzzles that seem impossible. But what happens when you encounter a puzzle that solves itself by becoming more puzzling? When the truth you're seeking turns out to be that there is no truth to seek. Some of them probably started seeing patterns where none existed, desperate to find something, anything, that made sense. Others might have gone the opposite direction, becoming so paranoid about false patterns that they stopped trusting their own perceptions entirely. Because when reality becomes unreliable, how do you know what to believe? The beautiful tragedy is that the FBI's failure wasn't due to incompetence or lack of resources. It was due to the limitations of human understanding itself. They were trying to use finite minds to comprehend something infinite, trying to use logical tools to understand something that existed beyond logic. And so they did the only rational thing left to do in an irrational situation. They closed the file, marked it unsolved, filed it away in some basement archive where it could gather dust and whisper to other unsolved cases about the day the FBI met its match. But closing a file doesn't make the mystery disappear, does it? It just acknowledges that some things are bigger than our ability to understand them. Some questions are more important than their answers. Some mysteries are meant to remain mysterious because the moment we solve them, they stop being what they truly are. The FBI gave up, yes. But maybe, just maybe, giving up was the only way to win. Because sometimes the greatest victory is knowing when you're beaten. Sometimes the wisest action is admitting that wisdom has its limits. Sometimes the most courageous thing an investigator can do is stop investigating. The really twisted part? The mystery started changing the people who investigated it. Not just their careers or their confidence, but their fundamental understanding of reality itself. Agents would go home and find themselves questioning the most basic assumptions. Is the sky really blue? Or do we just call it blue because we've agreed to? Is 2 + 2 really 4? Or is that just another pattern we've imposed on chaos? Their families probably noticed the change first. Spouses asking why their partner was staring at the ceiling at 3 in the morning, muttering about evidence that proved its own irrelevance. Children wondering why daddy suddenly found their simple questions about how the world works so disturbing. Because when you've seen the foundations of logic crumble, even a child's innocent "why is water wet?" becomes a philosophical crisis. The case started appearing in their dreams, but not as nightmares. Nightmares, at least, follow some kind of dream logic. This was different. This was dreams that made perfect sense while you were having them, but became incomprehensible the moment you tried to remember them. Dreams where you solved the case completely, only to wake up and realize that the solution was written in a language that didn't exist. Some agents probably started keeping journals, trying to document their thoughts and feelings about the case. But imagine trying to write about something that defies description. The words would look right on the page, but they wouldn't capture the essence of what they were experiencing. It's like trying to describe the color purple to someone who's never seen color, except the thing you're trying to describe isn't even a thing at all. The FBI's training manual probably doesn't have a chapter on what to do when reality becomes unreliable. They teach you how to handle hostile witnesses, how to process crime scenes, how to build cases that will stand up in court. But they don't teach you how to investigate something that investigates you back. They don't prepare you for evidence that becomes less meaningful the more you understand it. And the meetings? Oh, the beautiful absurdity of those progress meetings. Picture a room full of highly trained professionals sitting around a conference table, trying to discuss a case that couldn't be discussed, using precise technical language to describe something that made precision meaningless, creating action items for actions that couldn't be taken, setting deadlines for objectives that couldn't be defined. The case supervisor probably went through their own special kind of hell. How do you supervise an investigation that's investigating the concept of investigation? How do you allocate resources to something that makes resources irrelevant? How do you write performance evaluations for agents who are doing their job perfectly, but their job has become impossible? But here's the most delicious irony of all, my magnificently mad audience. The FBI's reputation is built on solving the unsolvable, catching the uncatchable, finding the unfindable. They're the ones who step in when local law enforcement throws up their hands. They're the last resort, the final authority, the ultimate problem solvers. So what happens when the ultimate problem solvers meet the ultimate problem? They become human again, stripped of their authority, their confidence, their sense of superiority, reduced to what they've always been underneath all the training and technology and bureaucracy. Just people, trying to make sense of a world that doesn't always make sense. Just minds, trying to understand something that exists beyond understanding. The beautiful thing about institutional failure is how it reveals the institution's true nature. The FBI, for all its power and prestige, is still just a collection of human beings with human limitations. And this mystery didn't just test those limitations. It obliterated them. It took their greatest strength, their analytical capability, and turned it into their greatest weakness. Because analysis requires something to analyze. Investigation requires something to investigate. Problem-solving requires problems that can be solved. But what happens when you encounter something that exists in the space between problems and solutions? Something that makes the entire concept of problem-solving obsolete. The agents probably started developing their own private theories, wild speculations that they'd never put in an official report. Maybe this wasn't a criminal case at all. Maybe it was something else entirely, something that just happened to look like a case from the outside. Maybe they were investigating the wrong thing in the wrong way for the wrong reasons. Some of them might have started wondering if the mystery was investigating them, if their attempts to solve it were actually part of it, feeding it, making it stronger. If every question they asked was really an answer to a question they didn't know was being asked. If every piece of evidence they collected was actually evidence of their own confusion. The forensic specialists probably had their own unique brand of frustration. These are people who can extract information from the tiniest traces of physical evidence. They can tell you what someone had for breakfast based on a single hair follicle. They can reconstruct entire crime scenes from microscopic clues. But what do you do when the physical evidence seems to be mocking the very concept of physical reality? DNA that matched nobody and everybody. Fingerprints that belonged to people who didn't exist. Photographs that showed different things to different people. Evidence that was simultaneously conclusive and inconclusive, meaningful and meaningless, real and unreal. Now, my deliciously deranged disciples, we come to the heart of the matter. What was this mystery that broke the FBI? What was so perfectly mysterious that it made mystery itself seem inadequate? The answer might surprise you, or it might not surprise you at all. Because the most mysterious thing about mystery is that it's always hiding in plain sight, wearing a mask made of our own expectations. The truth, my beautifully bewildered audience, is that the FBI didn't give up because they couldn't solve the mystery. They gave up because they finally realized what the mystery actually was. And that realization was so fundamentally disturbing, so cosmically hilarious, that it shattered their entire worldview like a mirror thrown against a wall made of questions. You see, the mystery wasn't a case at all, as it was a mirror, a perfect, twisted reflection of the FBI's own investigative process, turned inside out and fed back to them like a snake eating its own tail. They weren't investigating a mystery. The mystery was investigating them. Every question they asked became a question about the nature of questioning. Every piece of evidence they collected proved that evidence itself was just another form of confusion wearing a badge. The beautiful, terrifying truth. The mystery was the act of investigating mysteries. It was the FBI discovering that their entire existence, their purpose, their identity was built on a foundation that didn't exist. They were professional puzzle solvers who suddenly realized that puzzles might just be an illusion we create to make chaos feel manageable. Imagine the cosmic joke of it all. The Federal Bureau of Investigation investigating investigation itself. The hunters becoming the hunted, the questioners becoming the questioned, the solvers becoming the problem that needed solving. They were staring into a funhouse mirror that showed them exactly what they were. And what they were was absurd. The case files probably contained thousands of pages documenting their own confusion, evidence of evidence proving nothing, testimonies about the unreliability of testimony, photographs of photographers taking photographs of nothing. It was an endless loop of investigation investigating itself until the very concept of investigation collapsed under its own weight. And the FBI agents, they became characters in a story they were trying to write, actors in a play they were trying to direct, dreamers trapped inside a dream about waking up. They realized that every case they'd ever solved was just another version of the same mystery. The mystery of why we need mysteries to solve in the first place. So they did the only sane thing in an insane situation. They walked away. Not because they were defeated, but because they finally understood that victory and defeat were just more illusions, more patterns imposed on chaos to make it feel less chaotic. The mystery remains unsolved because it was never meant to be solved. It exists to remind us that some questions are more important than their answers, that some truths are too true to be understood, that some mysteries are perfect exactly because they're mysterious. And you, my wonderful watchers, you're part of it now too. By listening to this story, by trying to understand the mystery of the mystery that couldn't be understood, you've become investigators investigating investigation itself. Welcome to the case that never ends, the question that answers itself. By refusing to be answered, the FBI gave up trying. But the mystery never stops solving itself, one confused mind at a time.